Hey, what's up? It's Václav here, and this is another video. This one is about scheduling in Home Assistant, calendars, keeping track of events. Hey, did you know I make this garbage collection custom integration for Home Assistant? And I thought I'm gonna make video about that. And then when I thought about this, about what I'm gonna say, what this video is gonna be about, I thought making video just about this one specific integration is gonna be too narrow, too specific. It's gonna interest only a few people. And so I thought I'm gonna make it broader. I'm gonna make it about scheduling in general, because there's other ways how you can do scheduling. You know, garbage collection integration was really made to schedule garbage collection. These are events that have some rule, that are happening regularly. And it doesn't mean like on Wednesday each week. That would be too simple. But there are usually rules like every first Saturday each month, or every last Wednesday each month in the summer except public holidays, things like that. And this is what garbage collection can do. So I'm gonna show you how to do that. But people were asking me to do other things, like they have a table with a bunch of random dates and they wanted to schedule them and hard code them in the garbage collection. And you could do that, but maybe there are better ways to do that. Or some of them ask me, how can I schedule my wife's birthday in garbage collection, which you can do, but you know, the name garbage collection is raising some concerns. So it's not something that you can say, hey honey, let me show you what I have in here, garbage collection with your birthday. They don't like that. So I'm gonna show you other ways how you can do it. I'm gonna be talking about Google Calendar, but also the date and time sensors and sun events. So this is what this video is gonna be about. First, let's talk about the garbage collection. Let me show you how I use that. In the village where I live, we sort the waste. We have 5 types of waste that we sort. The general waste, which is collected once per week on Wednesday. Then the bio waste, which is collected every other week during the summer. Then the plastics, which is collected twice a week. The papers, collected once a week, and then the large volume waste, which is collected from the center of the village twice a month during the summer and once a month in the winter. So what I like to do is I have those pictures on the dashboard on the front page with colors. So if the color is green, that means the collection is today. If the picture is amber, that means collection is tomorrow. So normally in the evening what I do is, if there is amber icon, I prepare the container to be collected the next day. And then if it's gray, it means it's sometimes later. Then there is the number of days till the next collection, which is displayed in the title of each of the pictures. And if I click on it, it will tell me more details. So it has some history, but it also shows me the next collection date, the number of days till the next collection. That's the same information as here in the title. And then there is the state to pick up the right color of the icon in here in the dashboard. So it's 0, 1, or 2, and I'll show you how to use that. So this is one way to show that. The other way is there is a calendar. And in the calendar, you could see all the collections of all the garbage. I have a monthly calendar showed right now, so I can see overview of the whole month. I also configured 2 more collection schedules. One is for the last Saturday, just to show you how it works. And then there is one configured for odd weeks, which I'm going to be talking about later. So now that we know what we're aiming for, what we're trying to do, let me show you how easy it is to configure it. First thing we need to do is to install it. The easiest way is through Home Assistant Community Store. Just click in there, go to Integrations, hit this little plus icon, search for garbage collection, and you should see it in the list. I don't see it because I already installed that, so here it is. And this is how it looks like. There are some other garbage collection services, but most of them are linked to a specific town or city, and they're getting the information from the web, from the internet. So they are not configurable like mine. Whilst you're in the community store, you can also go to front end and grab the garbage collection card, and I'm gonna be talking about it later. If you don't use the community store, you can grab the garbage collection on my GitHub, and it includes instructions how you can install that manually. And that is pretty straightforward as well. So now that we have it installed, we can configure it. I'm gonna start from the end. I'm gonna show you how to configure the Lovelace first, and then we're gonna go back and configure the entities. So to configure the Lovelace, I'm gonna go in here, configure UI, edit, and here we are. So this is the collection for the general waste. So the basic principle is it's a picture entity card, and I'm using the state image based on the number. So it's for 0, that means today. It will choose the picture that has the general waste today, then I have another picture for general waste tomorrow, and then another one for general waste of the gray one. So this is this one. I'm also using the custom card templater. This is optional, and the reason I do that, I'm actually, instead of the name, normally it will show the sensor name in here, and I chose, instead of the name, to use the attribute number of days. So I'm showing how many days there are till the collection. So without that, it will look something like this. So it will say this is the picture, and there is a name of the sensor, and I can also say I don't want to show the name of the sensor, and it will just show the picture. So I can do that as well. I have decided that I would like to show the number of days in here as well. It's not that difficult. So this is how I use that. So let me show you where the images are. I can do that from the Samba, but what I'm gonna do is I have the Visual Code Studio, and there is a file browser in here. So what I can show you, here you go. So there is a www directory, and then there is a containers. So here they are. So there is the general today, general of, general tomorrow. So these are the icons. I have the same for bio. I have the same for the paper, and so on. So I have those pictures which I have created somewhere, and I'm just switching between those pictures, and they are saved in the www containers. These are then referenced here. That means instead of www, it says local, and then the rest is the path to the file. The other alternative, if you don't want to use the picture entity card, maybe with the template, you don't want to mess around with this, you can use a specialized garbage collection card. You can get that from the Home Assistant community store on the front end. You can get it in here, get it installed, search for garbage collection card. Here you go, I already have it installed. So let me go to the repository to show you the configuration options. So this is how it looks like, and I just copy this configuration from here, paste it in here. Now I can get rid of all of this indentation, and here I need to replace, for example, this one. So this is the basic configuration. Here you get it. It says the date in how many days, so you don't have to fuss around with the templates. Here you can change the colors, you could change the icons, and so on. So you could, if you like this type of visual, you could use that as well. Now that we know how to visualize the sensors on the front end, let's talk about how you can add different entities, what configurations options you have. Now there is two ways to create entities, two ways to configure them. The easiest way is to go through the configuration integrations, and in here you can just hit the plus icon in here, go for garbage garbage collection, and here you will configure and create a new entity. So you will name it something. Here you can select the type and frequency of the collection, and I'm gonna be explaining them in a second. And then you configure all the different parameters. Offset, here you can select the different icons. There is a parameter for expiration time. So what it does is, if you know that the garbage is happening in the morning, you might set the time for noon, and what it'll do is in the afternoon it will switch the icon and look for the next collection, so it won't show it till midnight. Then there is this verbose state. You can turn it on if you don't plan to use this picture entity card in your Lovelace. That picture entity needs the state to be 0, 1 or 2 to choose the right picture. But if you don't want to use it, you can turn this on, and then the state can contain more information, like the number of days till the next collection or the date of the next collection, which you can configure in those parameters here below. If you submit it, then you get next page of the parameters depending on the frequency. So they're going to be different based on the frequency you select. So we select weekly. So it's asking us what days. So maybe we say Monday and Wednesday. We submit it. And then finally on this page, you could configure some additional parameters. If the collection is not happening throughout the whole year, here you can select from what month till what month the collection happens. Here you can manually add or remove some calculate collection days. There is a place to select country to automatically move collection day to a next day. And then there are some 3 other parameters that are relevant for this country that automatically moves the collection to the next day. So if I say submit, it will create a new sensor automatically. So if I go in my developer tool and I look for test, you will see there is this sensor test. And if I look at that, it will say that the next collection is on the 13th, which is in 2 days. So this is on Monday. I said it's gonna be Monday and Wednesday. Today is Saturday. So we have just done that. The beauty of that is if I would like to change parameters of that, I can go into the test, I can go to options, and then here I can change the parameters of the sensor, and I don't have to restart Home Assistant. So this is great. I could also remove it from here and it's gone. So this is one way to configure it. The other way is to configure it in YAML. So if I go again to my Visual Studio Editor, and you can configure it the old-fashioned way in the YAML file, and we will go through the configuration in a second. Personally, the way I use that is I still have that in YAML for 2 reasons. One is because I had it there originally and I can't be bothered to remove it and do everything again in the GUI configuration. And the other reason is because I'm developing this, it gives me the option, if I want to temporarily get rid of those sensors, I can just comment them out, and then if I would like to put them back in, I don't have to recreate them, I can just uncomment those lines. So it gives me this flexibility to return back to where I was, back it up, and play with those parameters. So I use that, and for the testing, if someone is reporting some bug, I usually create those tests in here in the GUI. So let me briefly show you what I have. So this is the general waste. It's weekly on Wednesdays, and I said it expires at noon. I don't use the verbose state because I would like to have those numbers 0, 1, 2, because I use this picture entity card. So it's very important, if you would like to use picture entity card, you can't use verbose state, because then the status is not gonna be 0, 1, 2, right? It sounds obvious, but I had quite a few issues logged where people turn on the verbose state and then they were complaining that their picture entity card doesn't work. Then I have the bio-waste, which is happening in odd weeks between March and November, so during the summer essentially, and spring and autumn, on Thursdays. And again, it's happening in the morning, so it expires at noon. And I have included some additional days I think it was a test. And then paper, plastic. I'm not gonna go through everything, but there is one more I wanted to show you, and this is this volume waste, so the large volume waste that is collected by the commune in here. And the type of the frequency is a group. So what it does is it takes two other sensors and it groups them together. So it says its frequency is group, and I add two entities. One is the volume collection, which is happening whole year. So this is here, and it's happening monthly on Saturday, and it's first Saturday each month. Again, it's in the morning. I think it actually expires at 11, not 12. And then I have the summer collection, which is happening also monthly, but on the third Saturday. But it's only happening between March and October. And then I have this group which is combining the two together, and you have already seen what it does. So you have seen how I did it. So let's head on to documentation to show you all the other options you have. So if you go to Home Assistant Community Store, garbage collection, you can go to repository, which brings you to my Brooksy 70 garbage collection GitHub page. And so this is the garbage collection sensor. There's whole description of the different schedules. So weekly, it's happening every week on a given days. You could also do every number of weeks. So bi-weekly, every third week, every fourth week, and so on. There is a variant of that. This is even weeks or odd weeks, which is happening every 2 weeks, but it's looking at the week number, whether the week number is odd or even. And then you have every number of days, which is an interesting one, because if you say every 14 days, it sounds similar to every 2 weeks, right? But there is one important difference. If you look at the odd weeks or even weeks, or even every number of weeks, it's looking at the week number. So it sort of resets at the beginning of the year where you have the week number 1. So if you look at this year, 2020, this year has an odd number of weeks. It has 53 weeks. The 53rd week is the week of the December 28th and December 31st is on Thursday. So week number 1 starts on January 4th on Monday. So you have 1 week which is 53, and after week 53 there is week 1. So you have 2 consecutive odd week numbers. So if I go to August, September, October, November, December. So in December you have the collection on the 14th and then 28th. So it's every 2 weeks. But then there is the week number 1, which is odd week as well, and it's happening week after. And some people were complaining about, how it's possible that if it's every 2 weeks. No, it's not every 2 weeks, it's every odd week number. So if you would like to have it every 14 days, what you could do is you can say every n days with the period of 14, and then it will essentially happen every 14 days regardless of the week number. Then you have monthly, which is every nth week number of the month, so every first Saturday, every second Wednesday, or whatnot. And with the offset you could also configure it for the last week number of the month. I'm gonna show you how it's done as well. And there is an annual one. I added that recently, so it's happening once a year. People were asking for it. Personally, I don't use that because I use Google Calendar, for example, for it. I didn't see a reason why you should schedule something which happens once a year. But many people ask for it, so I add it in there. And finally, we have the group. So there are some examples you can look at. And then there is the full documentation of all the options, so all the frequencies. Offset is the last addition to this integration. What it does is it will calculate a collection day and it will then offset it by number of days. So for example, if you would like to have a last Saturday each month. So what you could do is you could set collection for the first Saturday each month, and then you offset it by -7 days. So it will go for 1 week before first Saturday is obviously last Saturday of the month before. You could also use it to look for the full weeks of the month and so on. So you could be creative in here. Hidden is the parameter related to the calendar. So I have here the calendar where it shows all the collections. If you don't want to show the collection in this calendar, you will say hidden and it won't show in here. In fact, if you set this parameter for all of your senders, it won't even create the calendar. There you can set the icons. I showed you that. Expire after we have discussed. Verbose we have discussed as well. So there's the full description of all the options, what you can do with that. So these are the parameters that you can configure for all the frequencies. So that's basically what you see on the first page of that GUI configuration. Then there is parameters that are relevant for specific frequencies. There is one which is valid for all of them except for the annual. And again, this pretty much resembles what you see on the last page of the GUI configuration, which is you can collect the collection days, first month, last month. They obviously make no sense for the annual because there it's just a specific date that you configure, right? So you can move holidays and it's all explained in here with links how you can configure those holidays, what they mean. I'm not gonna go into that. Every n weeks that it takes, the n, how many weeks, so there's the period, every 1 week, every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks, and so on. And there's the first week number. By the way, this is what I use for the even weeks and odd weeks as well, because essentially every odd weeks is collection every n weeks with period of 2 and first week equal to 1. And every even weeks is, again, every n weeks with period of 2, but first week equal 2. Here you have the reference of what the week number means, because there's different ways to calculate the week number, and I'm using the international standard for it. For the collection every n days, again, you select the first date and the period, which in this case is the number of days, not number of weeks. Then you have the monthly collection. Collection day is described in here in the common parameters, except for the annual. And then you just select the order number. So is it the first Saturday or second or third? So this is what you configure here. And here you have two options: weekday order number. So this is counting the occurrence of the weekday, so first Saturday of the month. And there is another option which someone asked for. This would be like the Saturday of the second week of the month. So there is a flavor of that. And there is also an option if the frequency is not happening every month, but every 2 months or every 3 months, you could do that as well. Then there is the annual, where you can set the date without the year, just month and day. So you could do that. And then there is the group. Then there is description of the states. And here I have few examples of how you can do your Lovelace integration. So this is the one I have showed you before. There is also one using entities, and there is one using glance view. So these are basically all the parameters described in here. You can use that either to configure it in the YAML. Again, example is in here in the beginning of the file. It doesn't contain all the parameters and combinations because there is just so many, but it can give you an idea how you can do that. But the easiest way is to do the GUI configuration through the what we call config flow. But you can always refer to this documentation if you don't understand what some parameter of that page means. In fact, if you are configuring this integration, there is a link to this documentation page there as well, so you can refer to it if you're not sure. So that was garbage collection. Now let's go and look at how to configure the integration with Google Calendar. I spoke about it before. You can create different calendars in Google and integrate them to Home Assistant. Let me show you how. Pretty easy. Google Calendar, we start at Google. I'm already logged in, so I'm gonna go to the applications, calendar. And here I already have a bunch of calendars configured, and we're gonna create new one. So I'm gonna hit this plus icon, say create new calendar. I'm gonna call it test, and I can put description, time zone, and say create calendar. And it's gonna edit in here between my calendars once the creation is finished. And I can already hit the configure button in here. And what it's gonna do is it's gonna allow me to do some further configuration. I don't need to do anything in here except I need to check and configure this calendar ID, which I might or might not need, because Home Assistant should actually detect new calendar and add it automatically. Let me show you how. So I'm gonna search for Home Assistant Google Calendar, and it's gonna find this Google Calendar event in Home Assistant documentation. So I'm gonna go in there. And it's telling me I need two things. I need to add the Google keyword in the configuration.yaml, and then I need this Google Calendars YAML file. So I need to go to the Google Developers console and get the client ID and client secret. I already have that since I use Google Calendars. There's a wizard, it's already described in here. And once I have it, I go to configuration.yaml and I add that. I add Google with the client ID and client secret. So let me show what I have. I go to the Visual Studio Code and I will show you my configuration.yaml. And in here I have Google with a client ID, where the ID is in the secret, and the client secret, where again I have that in the secret file. And I have a track new calendar, which I think by default is true, but I have it in there. So it should automatically add new calendars to the Google Calendars.yaml. So if I now go and configure server console, I restart my Home Assistant. I don't need to check the config because I haven't changed anything. I just restart it, and it should restart very quickly now with the new Home Assistant version. In the meantime, I can go to this calendar and I can create one test event in here. So I'm in the test, and I'm going to go in here and I'm going to click create test event in my test calendar, and I'm gonna hit save. Here you have obviously lots of options. You can move that, you can click in here, you can edit, you can create recurrent events, you can create new events, and so on. So I'm not going to explain how to work with Google Calendar. I suppose everyone knows it. So I have this calendar in here and I have created one test event, and let's see if the Home Assistant is going to pick it up. So I'm going to go in there. It's already restarted. So I'm going to head into the calendar, and it should create a new calendar test, and indeed it did create that, and it has at 8 p.m. event test. So it worked, and that's all it is. Let me show you in the developers tool. If I go to states, I go to test, and this is the event. So this is calendar test. It has message test, and this is the start time, end time. And what it's going to do is at 8 p.m., which is the start time, the state is going to turn to on. And then 9 p.m. this is going to turn to off. So I can use this state to trigger automations. I can also go into the Google Calendar file and see how it's created. So here it is. It added the calendar ID with the device ID and name, so I can change that if I want. And I have some additional configuration options. What I can do in here is I can optionally add search, and I can put some search string. What I can do with that is I can create multiple calendar entities in Home Assistant from this single calendar that will be differentiated by the text in the subject of this calendar event. So, and I use that, for example, in here for the shutters. So I have a calendar for the shutters, and I'm searching for text Clara shutter, and it's gonna create this sensor. and then for Jacob and for the bedrooms. So if I go back to my Home Assistant and I will search for that, you see there are those 3 shutters that are created from this single calendar. If you go back to this calendar and I'm going to open that, you see this is one calendar that has this text in here at different times, and it creates those 3 distinct sensors which I can use to trigger automations from Home Assistant. What I like about that is it's very easy to change. So if I would like to take this event and I will just drag it to 1 hour later and drop it, it's gonna ask me, is this recurrent event? Do you want to change only this one or all of them? So I will say just this one. And that simply, it will just create an exception and change my settings in Home Assistant. So I can do it from my mobile phones. I don't have to go to any YAML or restart Home Assistant or anything. I can just do everything from my calendar application. Now that was Google Calendar. Now there is one more way how to do scheduling. You could use date and time sensors in Home Assistant. This is great for things that are happening regularly, for example, every day at specific time, or bound to a specific event like a sunset or sunrise with some offset perhaps, or related to combination of different events. You could also bind it to different dates, so first of every month, and you could do that simply by using the date and time sensors in Home Assistant. Let me show you how it's done. Let me start with a very simple example that I suppose each of you knows, because this is one of the basic examples for triggering automations, and this is using the sun trigger. So you can trigger automation on sunset, and you can also use offset. So in this case, this automation is going to be triggered 45 minutes before the sunset. You can do similar thing for sunrise and so on. What you could also do is you could have a time trigger. So if you want to trigger something at a specific time, you could use the time platform. Or in here, if you want to use time pattern, this will be triggered each hour, 5 minutes past the hour. Or in this case, you could use time pattern to trigger something every 5 minutes, right? So this is very basic, right? Now you might be asking, why am I telling that to you? Because you can use it as a Lego brick to build some more complex scenarios. You can combine it with conditions and look, for example, for specific days of the week or specific dates in the month. So you can trigger it on specific time, but only in specific dates or weekdays. Let me show you how it's done. What we can do is we can use this sensor, which is platform, date and time. And in here you have different options you can set. You can choose one or multiple of those. I think time is not very interesting because we can do time directly in the automations. I just showed that to you. But date looks interesting. So we can create a sensor that contains today's date. And we can use it as a foundation for triggering some interesting stuff. So let me show you how it's done. I have in my home automation, if I go to developer tools, I go to states and I already have this sensor date and it contains today's date. It's the 13th of July 2020. And if I go to templates, I can start building some templates, conditions with that. Let me show you how. So I'm going to just go for states and I'm gonna put there the sensor name. So it was sensor date. So this is going to just show the value of this sensor. So this is today's date in the text format, right? So this is not very useful yet. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to convert this to date and time object. So I'm going to do it using function strptime. And this function has two parameters. One is the string with the date, which we have just supplied from this sensor. And the second one is the formatting function. And this one was year, then there was a dash, then there was month and dash, and then there was a day. So if I do that, it looks like nothing has happened except the 000 behind the date. But this is showing me that actually it converted the text string into the date and time object. So what I can do is I can access different attributes of this object. So for example, if I type dot here and type year, it will be this year, 2020. If I type month, it's this month. If I type day, I have a day. Today is 13th, which is already interesting, right? Because if I would like to have a condition that this automation should run each month on the 13th, I can just put there a condition, day equal 13. This is true because today is 13th. And if I put it in my automation as a condition like that, condition is template, value template, and there I will just type this, what I just showed you. Then this automation will be only triggered on the 13th. Or if I would say 1, it will be triggered on 1st of each month. It means it won't be triggered today because today is 13th. I can also look for a weekday. So for that, I like to use the international standard. So I will use ISO weekday. And this one has brackets because it's a function. And ISO weekday is the number of the weekday. So today is Monday, so it's 1. Tuesday 2, Wednesday 3, and so on. So by doing that, I can trigger the automation only on Saturday or only on Monday. And I can combine those conditions, right? So I can say, for example, the month is between 3 and 10, and the day is less than 7, and the weekday is 6, and it will be first Saturday each month between March and October, right? So I can build expressions like that. I wouldn't create complicated business logic in there because we are basically putting configuration in the code, so it will be quite difficult to change and maintain and not very flexible. But if it's something very simple, like every Monday or every first of the month, I think this might be actually a good solution. So these were 3 ways how you can schedule things in Home Assistant. I picked up those 3, but this list is by no means complete. There is endless number of other ways you could achieve the same thing. But this video has to end sometimes, and it's ending now. So that was it, and catch you up in the next one. Bye.